Our next speaker is Andrea McCarthy, who is the Media Relations Manager at the Cato Institute here in Washington, where she handles media outreach in multiple issue areas, including budgetary and fiscal policy, and entitlement reform and foreign policy. She's been with several communications director with several political campaigns and legislators, and many of you know what a wonderful job Cato does with media relations, and I'm sure we give Andrea a lot of credit for that. So she's going to talk to us about media relations. So come on up, Andrea. Thank you.
Good morning. I gather that many of you might be from Northern California, and I am as well. And I also was there that fateful day when SB 375 was signed, so please forgive me. I worked for Governor Schwarzenegger for 3 years, and that's where I initially learned media relations. So if you guys don't like him, what you're learning from me will maybe be successful in battling the things that are going on there in California. So I know that some of you probably are going to know a lot of what I'm going to talk about today already, and if you do, I apologize, bear with me, and I'm happy to answer any specific questions you have at the end of this. But really what I want to start out by saying is maybe some bad news. Like, maybe you have a great idea. You know that what's going on in California is really bad. But the problem is that when you have this great idea, if nobody knows about it, is it really an idea? It's the whole tree falling in a forest thing. So what your job is to make sure that people know about it, and that happens through media outreach. So really quick, how many people here, like at the Cato Institute, so I work on behalf of Randall O'Toole a lot, I do media outreach, he also does some of his own, but how many people here have somebody that does media outreach for them? Okay, so a couple of you. But it looks like most of you are gonna need to do media outreach on your own. And even if you do have a PR person, I highly recommend building your own personal relationships with journalists. As Mimi said, you built a relationship with the radio personality. That's really important because you're the person with the ideas. You're the person that has it. Like, having a relationship with a PR person, like, it's good for me and my future and all that, but it's better for you to have that relationship yourself. So even if you have a PR person, I highly recommend doing some outreach on your own. And if you don't work with the media right now, you might be a little wary of them. You know, some people think that the media is very biased, and that can be the case sometimes, but a lot of times journalists just want to do their job and they want to do it well. And they understand that you have a job to do, and they understand that they have a job to do. So you kind of have to meet them in the middle there. It's kind of like what Mimi was saying, you know, government goes to those who show up, and it's the same with the media. I was doing a campaign out in South Dakota last year, and the head of the Democratic Party there in South Dakota called the political reporter every single day with a story idea. And guess who got most of the stories? The Democrats. So, you know, we won, yay, but it is South Dakota. So there's that. So basically, we also need to remember that journalists today, they're stretched really thin because they're shrinking media budgets. So once upon a time, a reporter was just covering transportation. Today, they're covering transportation, they're covering local business development, they're covering labor issues. So they've got a lot more on their plate. So that just means we have to work a little bit harder to get their attention. So if they're not responding to you right away, don't worry about it, but you've got to keep trying. So, but there's a couple of key little things that you can do to try to make your impact a little stronger. And so I'm going to go through 5 steps here. The first is to do your homework. Most of you probably know the audience you want to reach. You want to reach residents or voters in a specific area, whether it's, you know, Marin County, whether it's somewhere in Nevada or even in Washington, D.C. So you know that. So you've got to figure out then who reaches that audience. What does that audience read? What do they listen to? What do they watch on TV? So if it's the Marin Independent Journal, you know, if it's the San Francisco Chronicle, if it's, you know, the Washington Post, whatever that is, you need to find out what people read, and then you need to find out what journalists cover that beat, the beat that you're looking for. So who does transportation? So if you don't know already, the main reporter for the newspaper in your town that you're trying to reach, then there's a couple ways to do that. I'm assuming you guys don't have fancy databases like Cato has, where I can just, type in a name and it tells me all these things. But so you guys probably have to do it the old-fashioned way, like scouring the internet and making phone calls. So go to the website of the radio station, the TV station, whatever. A lot of times on their contact list, they'll have all the pictures, all the names, and what they cover. If they don't, go through headlines and bylines and see if you can see a common, X person typically covers X issue. If that doesn't work, go ahead and just call the newsroom. Say, I'm Andrea McCarthy, I work on this issue, I'm looking to get a hold of your reporter who covers transportation, could you tell me who that is and how to get a hold of them? So that works all the time, actually. People want to help you, which I found a lot because I end up cold calling a lot. So that's what you want to do. You want to do your homework, you want to figure out who it is that you need to be reaching out to so that you can reach your target audience through the media. And once you do that, you need to formulate a pitch explaining what it is that you want to do. And the primary way of doing that now is through email. And so that's what I'm going to encourage, is that you make your first point of contact through email. If you don't meet them, if you meet a reporter at an event or something like that, that's great. But this generally is for email pitching. And so you need to remember that they're stretched thin, they get hundreds of emails a day, so you need to make yours stand out. So what that means is a strong, short subject line. You don't want a subject line that's going to go on and on. You want something that someone's going to see. Like if you're on a BlackBerry, you kind of want that subject line to just be on that line that shows up in that BlackBerry, if possible. I mean, sometimes they're going to be longer, but try to keep it short. You're also going to want your pitch to be short enough so that, this is my rule of thumb, is that the reporter should be able to see where your email signature ends and see some space under that, so they know it's not going to go on and on and on. They're going to know right when they open that they can see the beginning and the end of your pitch right there. So about 2 short paragraphs is what I'd recommend. And if you want to paste something in the body of the email, that's fine too, but do it after the signature, because that signature is what indicates the end of the pitch, and so they can choose to read on or not. So even though you only get 1 to 2 paragraphs in this initial pitch, you still have to make it clear, you have to make it compelling, and you have to make it unique. So when I say clear, I really just mean don't make it too complex. Assume that the journalist you're reaching out to is somewhere between expert and novice. And because they cover so many issue areas now, that's probably going to be it. They're going to know a little bit about your issue area, but they're probably not going to be like the Ralph Vartabadians at the Los Angeles Times, who's been working on transportation issues for years and years. So there's that. So you want to avoid lots of acronyms, stick with commonly used jargon, not super technical terms. And so, because if you're not clear, the journalist may miss the compelling and unique part of your message, which is pretty important. And that's where you kind of want to tell your story, like Mimi was saying, where you kind of use the same language, you use the words, you use sprawl, you use that stuff, but you use it against them. You kind of tell your story in that way, but in a short way. So the compelling part needs to say why what you have to say is important. So tell them why what you have to say is important. And then you need to give them the unique part, which is why what you're saying is different from what's already been said. Because if you're just telling them, oh, hey, the president seems to not be aware of what's going on in his government, there's a lot of people saying that right now. So you need to say something a little bit different. In short, your pitch should answer the questions, why now and why you? So keep it short and compelling. And then here's another important part, because you're going to do all this work and it's going to seem like a lot of work, and it is a lot of work. That's why I have a whole job doing media relations. But you need to personalize that pitch. The fastest way to get your email deleted is to just send a mass impersonal email and have everybody be CC'd. So you found everybody that you want to reach out to, and then you're just going to plug in them in the BCC and send them all the same pitch. That will not work. You have got to personalize it. Anyone can send a so the successful person takes the time. So So essentially, if you want a journalist to pay attention to you, you need to show them the same courtesy and prove that you've paid attention to them. Use their name, reference their work, explain why you think they'd be interested. Also, if you haven't worked with a journalist before, always introduce yourself. Never assume that they know who you are. Sometimes they might, but never assume that they do. And even if you have met them at an event in passing, remind them of that. Jog their memory. I mean, that's kind of just, you know, you meet somebody at any event and you email them, you always jog their memory. Be like, we met here, we talked about X, I have this for you. So, and you want to explain why you're reaching out. So I did a little sample. First paragraph would be like, Dear John, my name is Andrea McCarthy. I'm on the media team at the Cato Institute, so I've identified myself. I read your recent piece on regional transit in Philadelphia, so I am explaining that I know what he's writing about and that I've read it, and I wanted to share a new study detailing why, if approved, this system will actually cause residents to drive more. So I'm saying I have something new for you, and here's what it's going to say. Like, this is what it's going to say. So I actually have no idea if that's accurate. I just made it up. But that's kind of like a really short kind of email introduction that I would send if I were pitching something. So personalization and taking that extra time will vastly increase your chances of pickup. And so the fourth thing is to follow up, because these journalists are stretched thin. So if you don't hear for a couple of days, give it definitely 24 hours. It's acceptable to follow up after 24 hours. If it's not urgent, give it 2 days probably, and then follow up. And this is probably the best time to use the phone to call to follow up, especially if you don't know them. Give them a call, be like, I'm so-and-so, I sent you an email regarding X on Tuesday. I wanted to see if you'd had a chance to read it and if you were open to discussing it further, or something like that. And that way is when you can starting building a dialogue with this journalist. You can also follow up via email. That's also really effective too. It kind of just depends on how big the audience you are. If I'm trying to invite 40 people to an event, I'm probably going to follow up via email. If it's just one journalist I'm trying to get hold of, I definitely do it over the phone. Now, if you don't get a response to your email, if you leave a voicemail and you don't hear anything, and you followed up, just let it lie. They're not interested, but it doesn't mean that they won't be in the future. Just because they don't like this pitch doesn't mean they won't like your idea. How many times, Mimi, did you have to call that woman?
It was about 6 months before she finally...
Yeah. So, I mean, I've been pitching this one reporter over at Reuters for 8 months on one of our scholars. There've just been like probably 10 emails over the past 8 months. Finally, he called me yesterday wanting to talk to him. And so it's just, you don't want to give up, but you don't want to push them too hard either where you get a little overbearing, because then they're just going to be like, I don't want to talk to that person because that person is annoying. I mean, so that's that. But really, the point of that phone call, which is why I highly recommend the phone call follow-up, is to start the dialogue and then to begin building a relationship. Because the ultimate goal is for you to build a mutually beneficial relationship with this reporter. Because everyone knows, obviously, that relationships really are what matters in life. And that's the same thing with journalists. Because it's safe to assume that you all continue to do the work that you're doing, and reporters oftentimes stay on the same beat for years. So the guy that you're calling is probably not going to change. So you want to build that relationship with them. And you don't want that reporter to cover just what you want them to cover just once. You want that reporter to come to you every time that he needs something. If he's working on a different story that has no relation to something you sent him, you want him to think of you and be like, oh, I know that Andrea might have some good perspective, whether it's just background, off the record, on the record, any of that stuff. So, and that's where the relationship can flip, and it's your turn to be on the receiving end, because originally when you first pitched a reporter, you need them, and now they might need you, and that's where you guys really need to be sure to make yourselves available. Like, give them your personal email address, give them your cell phone number. 9 times out of 10, a reporter is not going to take advantage of your personal contact information because they have a job to do and you have a job to do. And so it's not like they're going to go give it out. And I know that that's a concern. And when I first started in media relations, like, I didn't even put my cell phone number on my email signature because I was like, well, I don't want them to get a hold of me. Like, but that's my job. So I learned that. So to build that successful relationship, it takes two. Like, you've got to give them something good, and then you have to be available when they need you. So in that way, it's kind of a win-win. So really, I mean, that's kind of just the basics on how to build that, and your aim should always be to build a relationship because, you know, it is hard, especially in areas like San Francisco where there are lots of liberal pockets of people who think that the sustainability thing is a very good idea. But the thing is that they're just the louder people. And it's really important, it's really important to know how to tell them the other side in a way that doesn't just seem like you're disagreeing with them for the sake of disagreeing. You have to give them a good reason. And so to do that, really, I mean, kind of just to recap the 5 things, is to do your homework. And you guys probably already know the right people to reach out to. And then to pitch them with a clear, compelling, and unique message, and to not give up. Like, if they don't respond to your follow-up, that's fine. Another 2 weeks, there may be a new issue cropping up. There might be a new town hall meeting. There might be a new something. Pitch them on that. Make sure that you make it personal. Read their stuff. Take the time to do that. And really just aim to build a relationship. And a couple other things is to just don't ignore radio, which is important because I know a lot of people really like seeing things in print, but I've also found that sometimes people forget about radio, and obviously America drives a lot, and they listen to the radio when they do. So if you can get an in with a radio station, that's golden for you. So that's about my presentation, so thank you.
Thank you, Andrea. And just to add a couple of things, because my background is journalism, and I handle the communications for the Georgia Public Policy Foundation. Don't hesitate to take advantage of your state think tank. Every one of you has a think tank in your state who knows who's working on what particular issue you're interested in, whatever particular issue you're interested in, and knows who you can reach out to. The second thing is, do not hesitate to reach out to your weekly papers. Just remember that those weekly papers, those neighbor newspapers, sit in that home and are read cover to cover every week. It doesn't have to be the Washington Post or the Wall Street Journal that you reach out to. Reaching out to those small communities is very important. And the third thing that I always try to remind people is when somebody calls you and asks you for an interview or asks you to respond to an issue, you are not obliged to respond immediately. Take a moment, tell them, you're busy right now, can you call back? What is it in particular that they need to know about? Take time to formulate your thoughts so that you don't sound like a doofus. So.